All right, well, it's 11:01, so we'll get this putting party started. I'm going to lead off by mentioning that, by thanking all of you for joining me today, and also relaying some news that today will be our final PUTTOut Friday session. It's been such a pleasure sharing this time and this virtual space with all of you over the past, I think it's been 10 weeks, if you can believe it, which is wild that for those of you who are right there at the beginning of these sessions, it seemed like we had such a mountain to climb, and now here we are, and we're in practically mid-March, and we're staring down the barrel of the golf season. So we're almost there, and I thank all of you for participating and for taking part in all of these PUTTOut sessions. It's certainly it's been a fun experience, and I hope you've got some takeaways, and I hope coming out of the winter months, you're better putters for all of the practice that you've been investing in your game. So I look forward to, it's going to be like a little army of little PUTTOut training trainers out on the putting green once we get out there. No, all kidding aside, it really has been a pleasure. So thank you all. Today will be the last PUTTOut. We will be continuing with the Wednesday Golf Live sessions. So those Wednesday sessions will continue until the season, or maybe just a few more weeks. But yeah, we'll continue to do those sessions as well. I wanted to start by thanking, there's been a couple of participants already putting their high scores in the document that I sent out last week. To speed, what we did is I launched a little, and here it comes into the link. So this, or into the chat, pardon me. So this will be a link to a Google document. It's a spreadsheet, it's a leaderboard where we were having just a fun little competition. It's just a way that we can all have a little fun and participate with one another. And to give you just an overview of what that little game was, you'll see it when you log on to the actual spreadsheet, but let me just quickly go over it as well. So it is, and I'm seeing actually some really great participant numbers. A couple of you are joining right now as we speak. So it's cool to see everyone kind of participating in that. You can edit it. We've got Bone Crusher currently leading the way. As I said, please use, within reason, use your appropriate nicknames if you want. If you don't want to put your name to it, that's totally cool. It's not necessary. Bone Crusher's leading the way at 25 points, and then Toe to Toe is second, if you've got it there on the screen, with 21. So those are formidable scores. So to take everyone over if you've got your PUTTOut mat handy, it's really easy to use with the lines. We're going to use that as a bit of a scoring system. And it's going to be 3 putts from each length. So there are 6 markers, 6 feet on the PUTTOut mat. You're going to putt 3 times only from each distance, for a total of 18 putts. If it hits the big cup, so the big colored circle, the one that ultimately represents the hole, and it comes back to you, it doesn't necessarily have to come back to you. I know a few times I've kind of creeped the edge of the, as long as it hits the big hole, you get 1 point. If it stops in the micro hole, you get 3 points. So tally up 18 putts, 3 for sticking it in the micro hole and getting it to stay there, and 1 point if you hit the large hole. So if you want to participate and throw your stats and your score, you can do it more than once. So if you do it today and you think, all right, I'm on the board, Taco the Cat, it has 18 putts, and then you want to try it again later this week, you can update your score and you can just keep going. If you want to manage that at home and sort of personally where you're at, and just you can measure yourself up with your cohorts, that's fine too. Just a little piece to help the days have some structure and some fun to them. So that's just a reintroduction of the PUTTOut leaderboard that was created. If you have any friends that you want to send that to, who are members or guest card holders at the club, copy that link now while it's still in the chat, and save it to an email so that you can send it out, because once you leave this Zoom, as sometimes those things get left in the chat and you think, darn it, I should have just copied and pasted that little that link or whatever. You do need that link in order to access it. So this is not accessible. This won't be in the public domain, if you will. People won't be able to go, oh, look, Susan Whitware scored 51 on her PUTTOut at the Ladies Golf Club of Toronto. This is only shared among us here in this space. In which case, Susan, I would applaud you if you had a score of 51. You would get a special championship trophy for that. PUTTOut champion. We'd have maybe a golden, just like Ping does. Maybe we'd get a gold-plated trainer cup, be able to present that. I love it. So please feel free, as I say, share with your friends at the club, and if they aren't able to join, send that along. So over the past 10 weeks, we've discussed all things putting. We've certainly, I've gone over all of the elements of the PUTTOut mat. We've talked about putters themselves and the technology, reading greens specifically at ladies. I've been taking on you through some of the holes and taking questions from everyone, which I've really enjoyed. We've talked about stroke and technique, about grip, about how to use the mat, about how to use the trainer cup in different ways. If in me refreshing what we've covered over the last 10 weeks, if there's anything, under those headings that is still a question mark or that you want me to speak to today, please throw it into the chat. If there's anything, as I said, those are sort of the main items that we've covered. And I've resent the link for anyone who's joined us late to the session today. Welcome, and I've resent the link to the putting competition. I thought what I would do today is I would speak to a little bit about when to putt. So a couple questions that came in said, when do I even know when to use my putter, and can I use my putter in other situations, and when should I not be putting, when should I be chipping, can I use this mat for other purposes? And the answer to that is yes. And I think above all else, I want you can use the mat for other purposes other than just simply using your putter. And I'll take you through a couple of those today. And I also will use this as an opportunity to really make the suggestion, and this probably is a review for many of you who already feel comfortable using your hybrid or your 8-iron or your 7-iron or your 5-iron or your fairway wood around the green for little creative bump and run shots. But for some of you, if you're thinking, I've never done that, I've heard of people or I've seen people do that in my group, but it's never been something that you've potentially felt comfortable with, the PUTTOut mat that you've got and the trainer is actually a really good opportunity to get comfortable with holding a hybrid for a little bump and run shot around the green. So, and I'll take you through sort of how to do that and what changes and why we would use that club and that particular shot. Above all, I want to really impress upon everyone that, and I've said this time and time again, if you watch the tours, whether it's the Symetra Tour or the PGA Tour, the LPGA Tour, or the any tour, European tour, you're going to see such a variety and a wide spread of different techniques, of different grips, of different stances. We are all, probably familiar with the Michelle Wee. She got to almost 90 degrees over top of the golf ball. And there's certainly lots of, if you watched Bryson on the weekend, you saw that he's got, kind of a very single lever. He almost attaches his putter to his front arm, or he gets as close as he can without doing anything against the rules. So there's so many different ways. So I will say, once you settle on a grip, for example, because a lot of the questions I get are about grips. Once you settle on a grip that ensures that your hands and wrists are not moving around throughout the stroke, perfect that grip. So whatever it looks like. And a question that I'm often asked is, can you take a picture of your grip and send it to me? Or should I be looking at any one particular grip? No, I would say take a picture of your grip, or get an idea of what you get the feeling of, when the putter is in your hands and it works for you, where there's no movement and where it feels really comfortable, and repeat that grip as often as you can. Even just sitting here, I've been sort of taking my grip kind of over and over and just kind of getting comfortable and making sure that each and every time you're not holding it in a different way, or you aren't sort of set on that grip when you hold the putter in your hand. So that's one piece to the grip. The other is be creative. So be creative. A lot of the drills that we've talked about over the last 10 weeks have been drills where you're not even putting with your eyes open, that you're not even putting, looking at the cup, or conversely, where you're actually just looking at the cup and not looking at the ball throughout the entire process. So be creative, experiment with these drills. If you have questions about them, again, if you have them and you can recall them today, pop them into the chat if you want to follow up at a later time. But be creative, trust your instinct and trust your feel. When it comes to reading greens, especially, when in doubt, aim at the cup. If you're ever uncertain, I sometimes, I think it might go right to left, and then it's like way out to, right field, instead of, just simply taking it sort of at the cup and doing your best judgment to judge the weight. And as I prefaced at the start of all of this, in terms of weight versus aim, while they're both incredibly important, so the speed, gauging speed versus aiming and aligning yourself, I would always sort of prioritize that, developing that element of feel for distance control, because my theory, and I know others who have spoken to this as well would agree, that you can be off by, let's say, a foot or 2 feet, but because of the circular nature of the hole, you can miss by quite a wide spread and still have a 4-inch putt coming in, as opposed to being spot on and blasting it 8 feet past, or being short 6 feet, or struggling with that distance control. And when you have an excellent ability to read the speeds of the green, that's when you can also start to be creative with blending the speeds with break, right? So coming in a little slower and using more of the slope, or mixing it up and kind of having that kind of creative element. So that's a couple of just, comments at the outset. There's no right or wrong. There are some, best practices, in that you don't see a lot of putters on tour where they're flicking their wrists or having a lot of instability. In fact, I don't think you'll see any of that. Now getting on to the putting versus chipping, when to putt when you're around the greens, and we'll talk a little bit about some creative ways that you can use your putt-out mat. The general philosophy that I tend to operate under is, if you can putt, putt. If you can have a putter in your hand, even if you're off the green by just a small amount, putt. Keep the ball low, keep the ball on the ground as much as possible. The reasons behind that, for me, and again, just based on my own personal philosophy, is the more you can keep it on the ground, the more you eliminate environmental factors. So if you're not sending it up into the air, it's not getting influenced by wind. It's not getting influenced by moisture. It's not doing any of that nature. It's also less variable in how it's going to react when it hits the ground. So if you keep it on the ground, you just have to contend with what it's going through on the ground, whether it's grass or dew or dirt or sand. But if it's going up in the air, you're also contending with what trajectory it's coming down on, what it's the surface that it's hitting first. Will it get stuck? Will it roll quite a bit? Is there a slope? So if you're sending a ball up in the air and the slope's this way and it's going that way, it's going to roll quite a bit, as opposed to keeping it on the ground, and you can manage the speed and control the distance a little bit better. So I will say, generally across the board, I tend to operate with the philosophy of keep it on the ground as much as possible. There are situations that will present themselves. I always say, let the lie determine whether you have to make it go over a bunker. If you got a bunker in front of you, you don't really have an option. You can't keep that ball low. You have to make it go up. The decision's been made for you. But when you have a decision to make and you have the option of putting, generally speaking, go with the putter. Less energy. So we generally, when we've got a putter in our hand, we're expending less energy on the motion, which means that because we're making a smaller motion, because we're not putting as much of our effort into it, there's less that can go wrong. Let's face it, if I'm taking the club back and then there's a lot of energy and there's a lot of moving parts happening in that motion, and there's a lot of variability that can happen as a result. So keep it small, keep it simple, less energy. Also, kind of piggybacking on that, there is also a more compact, more single lever, simpler motor skill involved with a bump and run or a putt. So if we take Bryson DeChambeau, for example, and I'll do my best putting stroke, Bryson. I need to stipulate that this is not going to be an all-out blast fest. This is his putting. Bryson tends to attach the putter like this. His left shoulder is very high. It's a single lever motion. And he putts like this, where it's all just one single lever with his lead arm. And you'll see that his grip actually gets quite close to his lead forearm. Again, that from a motor movement perspective, very simple. It's just one moving part, and it's just one lever that's at play. When we talk about the full swing, now we're talking about a couple different levers. And when we start making chips, and now we're involving our trail hand, and we're sort of getting a little wrist action, now we're introducing a second sort of lever action. So keep it simple when you can. You can also use a variety of golf clubs. So it's not necessary that you must use your 7-iron or your hybrid or your 5-iron. But what I would suggest that you do and get comfortable with is grab the whole bag. If you can, practice making putts with every single one of them, or making little bump and runs with every single club, and watch what happens to the ball, how far it goes with the same putting stroke with each of your clubs, how it reacts to the face. If I take, for example, my 60-degree wedge, and I'll show you here in a second, I'll do a little quick comparison so you can see. If I take my 60-degree wedge and I make a tiny little putting stroke, that ball is probably not going very far. It's probably going to hit up a little bit, jump up, and then it's going to have very, very little forward motion because the loft is so extreme or so pronounced. However, if I take my hybrid and I make that exact same motion, straight back, straight through, it's going to give a little bump, but there's less loft, and it's going to go quite a distance. So, and then as you go through with all of your different lofts, try them all. One big thing that I will say, and you'll see this in a few moments when I do a little demonstration, is that I do change the place that I'm gripping the club. So just like a putting stroke, we try to keep the fundamentals of a putting stroke in that I want to get over top of the ball as much as possible. Now with a hybrid, that's a much longer club. It's not designed for us to be right over top of it. So I do need to modify my hybrid, and I'll grab it here for a second so that I can demonstrate close to the camera before I walk away here. So if the hybrid is meant to sit like this, you can see that the shaft, it puts my eyes far away. So in order to stand with my eyes over top of the ball, I need to do this. Did everyone see how I raised the handle of the club up and I made the club more vertical? So what this also does, and this is a great little kind of chipping tip as well, is that we want to reduce, not so much on the hybrids, but with the irons, we tend to get like a heel contact with the ground that can sometimes do this and can shut the club. So up like this, and then hold it like a putter, and then make the putting stroke. Okay, so it's not that you're standing there with the hybrid and you're standing really far away, because now, again, if this is the part that we want to control, we talked a little bit about this with putting, and wanting to get our hands nice and close, because the closer our hands are to the putter face, the less ability we have to have this putter face be out of control and moving about. Same philosophy applies. We're going to slide the hands down. We're going to get as close, and now we can just keep that face nice and square. There's no rotation here. It's just as square as possible. So play with all of it. Play with all these different clubs on your PUTTOut mat. I'm going to show you now sort of what that looks like, and hopefully have some similar success to when I was playing around earlier, because I did get it a couple times to stay in. All right, so I've got my hybrid, and I'm just going to start at the 3-foot mark here. And I've got my 8-iron, and I'll grab my high lofted wedge as well. So here's a 58-degree wedge. All right, so I'll start with the hybrid, and I'll show you here. Hopefully, let me just angle this up so you can see a little bit more. There we are. Okay, so this is the hybrid. So as I said, if I stand normally, it's going to look like this, where I'm standing way back away from the ball. So I'm going to need to take this club and go vertical. What that means is I'm going to have to stand quite tall. So I've had to adjust my stance from a more flexed position into a much taller position. I'm going to lock my lower body just as I would with the putting stroke. I'm going to take a grip that resembles more of a standard grip, but you could do either. The only reason I'm using a standard grip is because the actual shape of this grip is now a standard grip. So it's going to give us more of an in the fingers kind of feel, but I do want to feel like there's no hands and wrists, even though I am taking it in a more kind of standard traditional grip for a club. And then I'm simply just rocking my shoulders back and forth, okay? And just giving it a little bump, just like I would for a putting stroke. And what I would suggest, and why I love this on the PUTTOut mat, is that often, there we got it to stick. So often, hooray, you know, what happens is we get out there and then there's hesitation because there's like kind of a trepidation that I've never tried it before on the practice putting green. I've never tried it in my practice sessions. And I don't feel comfortable just, you know, giving it a go out there for like during a round. So give it a try here, you know, get the hybrid in your hands, get the feel of how hot the ball comes off of the hybrid. I'll show you now with and you can go back. So if you wanted to go back all the way to 6 feet, same thing applies. You're just same as your putting stroke. You're just going to simply take it back a little bit. It's boom or bust here today. It's either in the microwave or it's missing the entire cup. And here we have the 8-iron. So same thing. I'm just going to, again, grip it very close to the shaft. So that allows the heel of the club to come off the ground. Okay, so I'm going to almost feel like I'm poking the toe of the club into the ground a little bit, and the heel's almost off the ground. I'm very tall. My eyes are directly above the ball. And now I hope everyone saw how muted that was when it came off. It really, because of the loft of the club, and I'll show you with the 58, there's not a lot of go on it. So that almost was a double hit because of the amount of loft. So that's just a really great example. You can use this simple little putting stroke movement, but I wouldn't suggest you grab a wedge. I would suggest you grab a 7-iron, 6-iron, 5-iron, or even a hybrid. I love the hybrid. If you were watching the LPGA on the weekend, I think Lexi Thompson hit a great shot. Just like let it, you know, feed down onto the green with a little hybrid, just a little bump and run. You can get really creative. And I found in my experience, it's not the most, it's a cool shot. It's not the most glorious shot. And I think, you know, a lot of times we're like, oh, I want to make it go up and then land it and have it stop on the green. And that's what the sort of beautiful kind of shot is. That's a very high risk shot compared to this one. And at the end of the day, we want to reduce the number of shots and strokes on our scorecards as opposed to, you know, the photographs that we don't have of those glorious shots. So again, it's kind of a risk management style of looking at the game. Does that make sense to everyone? If you have questions, here's some great questions are coming in, so thank you. Which loft hybrid do you recommend for this? Yeah, depending on what you have in the bag, any loft would work. For those of you who do have some like really lofted, if you're getting into like this one, for example, is a 25-degree, it's a 5 hybrid. I wouldn't go any more loft than this, but there might be an opportunity where you would, like if you had a little bit longer grass, you needed to just sort of bump it up a little bit higher. Again, loft it can help you if you've got a bit more energy that you're putting into it, because it's going to clear whatever you need to get over. But a hybrid with this style is going to keep the ball quite low, and it is going to have a lot of roll and a lot of release compared to an iron that has much more loft. But it's a fun little shot. So yeah, I would say like 4 hybrid, 5 hybrid, You can certainly use a 3 hybrid. If you still have a 1 iron or 2 iron, you can use that as well. Again, it just comes back to lofts and just keeping it low. Is a 3 or 5 wood too much to this? That's a great question. I have seen folks use their fairway woods around the greens. It's not inconceivable. The only thing that I have found with fairway woods is because the head size is rather large and the sole, is quite a lot of surface area touching the ground, and they're also longer, quite frankly. So if I compare this club to, grab it here, fairway wood, this is my 3 wood, you're going to see like that's a substantial length difference. So if I'm gripping down to try to get over top of this ball, I'm almost going to be poking myself in the stomach. I'm going to actually be too far away. Not to say that it's not you're not able to do it. Like I'll still be able to to execute that little bump. But it's almost a little too much. So not that I would say you can't do it, and there may be an opportunity, but those would be the elements that I would maybe just highlight it. Maybe against using a fairway wood, just the length makes it a bit prohibitive, and the size of the head versus the compact size of the hybrid, especially if you're chipping through maybe an intermediate cut of grass, like you're not on really, really short grass, you're kind of on that in-between cut. This might have a bit of more advantage because it's able to get through the grass a little easier, as opposed to this, you just might get into like clunky zone. Those are great questions though. Thank you for those. Are there any other questions about that practice with just, again, the putting stroke with different creative little, just different clubs, and kind of get the feel for it? You'll also notice how when you start going up in lengths and down in lengths, how that affects, as I mentioned earlier, the lie angle of the club. And I wanted to also mention, because I had said something earlier while we're on the subject of, I'm closing out the chipping session with, or the putting session with chipping, which I find is kind of humorous. So, all right, here's a wedge. So this is as it would sit normally, and I'll back up so that everyone can see here. Now, what tends to happen when we're chipping, let's say my fingers here are the grass, and we're going through the grass, is that from time to time with chips, we get this hosel or the heel of the club caught in the long grass, and it tends to kind of shut, or it can get some inconsistent contact. So what I would suggest for a lot of players is to do what we just did with when we were doing the putting stroke, even with chipping as well in general, is just bring the heel out of the grass by sort of pointing the toe more towards the ground. So you'll see that it's actually raising the handle up, making the club more vertical, and bringing the heel off the ground. And then you'll find that you're able to make cleaner contact when you're around the greens, if you have those little bump and run shots or those little chip shots from around the greens. So just a little trick, and it all comes down to sort of that lie angle, which we talked a little bit about last week in the context of putting. All right, so that's just a fun little way that you can use your mat. You can practice trying to get it. You could even do that with the PUTTOut leaderboard. Put a little bracket that you did that with your hybrid, and I'll be very impressed if you do that as well. So again, the reason that I'm suggesting this is that I want to definitely get across the message that you can use your putter anywhere. You can use any club anywhere. There's no rules about where you can and can't use certain clubs. Be creative. Again, from a scoring perspective, try to keep the ball as low as possible. Try to make use of this putting stroke because it is simple, because you've spent the most hours and it's the easiest one to practice. You've been spending all this time practicing it. So use that same stroke, use the same technique with other clubs around the green. And here's a great opportunity for the next couple of weeks indoors to start practicing with the hybrid so that you can get more comfortable and put some more miles under your feet, if you will, in terms of just logging more experience with that particular club. Are there any questions at all about any of the 6,000 and 55 things that we've discussed over the last 10 weeks. Grab a chair here and angle this back up. All right. Any questions at all? About the course, the greens, reading greens. Trust me, I can be baited down any rabbit hole to talk about any subject. And you know, I can talk and talk and talk. All right, it seems that my job here is done. No questions. You're all fantastic putters. I can't wait to see you all out on the actual putting greens in a few weeks' time. Fingers crossed that everything continues to melt and be warm. I did get a question here that says, not putting related, but will putting shaft more horizontal work well in fairway rough? Yeah, definitely, absolutely. Like you just bring that heel out of the grass instead of having it down low. I tend to make this error myself, just from when I get fatigued late in the round. My hands, like my posture gets low, my hands get a bit low, and then the heel of the club just sinks in, as opposed to kind of keeping myself nice and tall. Just making sure that you're getting centeredness of contact, toe, heel, are both coming through the grass, coming through the shot evenly, and that you're not getting any like prominent heel strike. My clubs are also 2 degrees flat, so they know that my hands like to get low because they're bent a little bit. So yeah, great question. Thanks again, everyone, for joining. Oh, another question was, do you recommend the use of a chipper? That's a loaded question, because I know that there are folks on here that use the chippers, and I love all clubs. I love all golf clubs. I don't know. I don't personally use the chipper, but I will say that those who use them love them, and they have been very helpful for a lot of folks. And it kind of it's a piece of equipment that makes the game easier. And if it makes the game easier, it makes it more enjoyable for certain players that like that. That's all I want for folks to have more enjoyment and to enjoy playing the game. So. At the end of the day, that's my very diplomatic answer to that question. Use the chipper if you like the chipper. It's been great to see everyone. If you want to join us again on Wednesday, we have the Golf Talk Live sessions continuing on Wednesdays. It's been an absolute pleasure. Keep putting, keep practicing, have fun, and we'll see you all very soon. Stay well.